It's been most definitely a hot minute since Dr. Charlie Nutt has been on the podcast. Charlie, welcome back to the Adventures in Advising podcast.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's always a joy to talk with you and to be a part of this, but it's also a great opportunity just to really say thank you to everyone in NACADA and thank you to everyone in the profession for all their support and love and connection over the past 22 years.
Yeah, and you've been busy. I mean, I've seen on social media that you're at Utah Valley University this week. There's an advising community retreat going on. What's been new?
You know, they were looking at hiring a senior director last fall, and they had some things fall through. So they asked me if I would come in and just serve as an interim. And so I've been back and forth to Utah since September. But part of that process has been that they're the first school who've gone through EAA as a total NACADA activity. And they've done a year-long approach. So this is the first institution that's done EAA in 1 year. And they have been amazing. We've had 9 committees who've been working so hard since November. They now have a new senior director. He's ready to take it and move the implementation forward. But Friday, we had about 120 or so advisors from across the community, folks from admissions, from registrar, from financial aid. Anyone who's interested in advising came to really hear the reports from all 9 committees, as well as their recommendations for moving forward. And so it was a great day. So we're in the process of putting those recommendations together. They spent about the last 30 minutes of a long day, 9 to 4 Friday, prioritizing those recommendations. And so we're kind of putting all of that together. The steering committee will meet this week to look at all of that. And then we're ready to turn it over to the senior director and the vice provost to begin looking at the implementation process. So it's been a busy year, but I've loved doing every bit of it. I think it made phasing into retirement a little, I might have been bored had it not been the case. I've also had a lot of, been very lucky to work so closely with Melinda in her first year. I promised her when she got the job, the first thing I said to her was, I will never call you, you call me. I'm not here to look over your shoulders. I'm not here to tell you what I think you should do. If you need me, I will always be here. And so it's been awesome for her to call me and for me to help walk through some things with her, that type of thing. But I tell you, Matt, I'm so proud of her. Kind of brings tears to my eyes because she is doing such a phenomenal job in her first year. And it's a big job. Even though she'd been on the council, she'd been on the board, I don't think she realized how big a job it is until you actually walk in the first day. But she is amazing, and I'm so proud of her. I know the association is going to do amazing things during her, I hope, 2 decades or more in the executive office. And after I'm long gone, I know the association will still be moving forward because of the work she's done. But she's amazing. So it's been great working with her when she's needed me this year. I'm getting my house ready to sell in Kansas and moving back home to Georgia. And so kind of dealing with that this year, getting things done that needed to be done. It's a house built in 1977. And so it's not a new house by any stretch of the imagination. So there were some things I needed to get done just to get it on the market. So it's on the market. We're having showings and that type of thing. And so if the recession or whatever we call it will hold off just a little bit, maybe I'll get it sold before the situation. I'm one of the lucky people. I have a house in Georgia, so I'm not having to buy. I'm not having to do all of that. So I just try to remain calm right. And know that, I've got 2 houses I paid for. I can survive within those pieces and kind of move forward. But yeah, I'm one of the lucky people. But I know it will happen at some point.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed on the sale, and seamless transition
Uh,
into retirement. But you were mentioning with Utah Valley University, you were mentioning EAA.
I'm
What
sorry.
is
Yeah.
what is
It's,
that?
it's an excellence in academic advising program
Mhm.
that the John Gardner Institute in NACADA started. Well, we started, I think, working on planning it probably 7 years ago, possibly. We had an amazing group of folks: Susan Campbell, Kathy Stockwell, Jane Drake, Nancy King, Wendy Troxel. All of them were involved with initial putting together the process. I'm sure you know about the John Gardner's Excellence in First Year Experience, and it's really an evidence based evaluation. An institution takes what we call our 9 conditions of excellence for academic advising, and all of this is on the NACADA website under programs. Um, but there's certain what we call KPIs, performance indicators, that will say, how well are you really putting together how you select advisors? What does professional development look like? Um, what's the opportunity to assess advising? All of those conditions. And so last year, the John Gardner Institute decided that they had a lot of their plate, and so it's now a total NACADA project, and we've worked the past year to put together kind of a plan for how NACADA will move this forward. Melinda now has it on her desk. As Susan Campbell said, we got it off our desk, we put it on Melinda's desk to move forward, because it's a great opportunity for the future. Melinda and I were talking recently, and NACADA is in an interesting situation, just like all schools. We've just gone through the pandemic. We now are facing what could be some financial issues from a national level. Higher education is going to need to change. And within that, NACADA is going to need to change and look at things differently. And I think that's why Melinda is just the person to move us forward, because she's looking at those things. She's thinking through how we do that. There's just all sorts of things she's looking at. But I think it's going to be an exciting, exciting time. So part of that, we hope, will be the EAA process for schools. We put together a plan where it could be what we call EAA light, what we call full EAA. The other piece of that, Matt, that I know will be coming out this year, which I'm very excited about, is Wendy Troxel with the Research Center has been working on an advising survey for campuses. Right now, there's not a lot of surveys that really look at advising, and quite frankly, they're not NACADA surveys, and they should be. So she has done an amazing job. She and Gary Cunningham in the EO have put it together. They've used, I don't know, DBI, whatever that statistical thing is she keeps telling me about. But it is going to be just a great process. And I think institutions that, even if they have no desire to do EAA, will be able to buy the survey, implement it. We'll process the data. We'll give it back to them so they can get a real view about how advising is seen from students, from faculty, from primary role advisors, for administrators, because I think you and I know everybody sees it different, but we never really ask folks. And I think the survey is going to be amazing. So I hope all of your listeners will just keep watching the NACADA website and looking for that survey, because I think it will be a huge, huge benefit to higher education and to our NACADA members. Obviously, NACADA members will, I hope, get a discount in that survey. And so I just think it'll be a great process. It's a type of product, Matt, that you could do for your area, or you could say, let's do it for the whole campus. So it's going to be really Wendy and Gary have done a phenomenal job with it. I have to say again, Susan Campbell, Kathy Stockwell has guided us through this process. I don't know how many people know this, but they should if they don't. Wendy, Susan, and Kathy are just amazing people who've done so much for higher education and for academic advising. And so I can't say enough about those three ladies and all they've done.
Yeah, I mean, the list goes on in terms of like we could be on here for hours and days talking about people who've had such an impact on advising or on you. And you were talking about just NACADA needed to move forward with
Yes.
things, and this is you've already named a few different ways that they're already doing that.
Yes, and I think we'll see more come up. I think there'll be ways that the Consultants Bureau can connect with things like the Summer Institute curriculum. A school like yours, Matt, that may want to do a total relook at advising, but quite frankly, you can't afford in this day and time to send a team of 12 to a week-long Summer Institute. So maybe we look at ways to bring institutes to institutions in those ways. And I know Melinda's looking at all of that, and it's going to be a fantastic future as we move forward. I'm going to hopefully in a year be sitting on the beach with a cigarette, looking at what Melinda's doing, and saying, "Good girl, I'm going to go back to the water," because I know it's going to be a great future.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned Melinda, and Melinda now almost at the time of this
Yeah.
podcast recording about a year now
Yeah.
as executive director. And I think a lot of people were confused in terms of like because I think some people thought you had already retired, and then you were in a phased retirement.
Yeah, Kansas State has a very unique process. I don't know how many other places have it, but you can do what's called a phased retirement. When I told Dean Mercer that it was kind of time for me to move on and do a search, I had planned to just fully retire. And the dean said, would you stay on 50% for a year just to give Melinda any support she needs? And so that's what I've been doing this past year. But as of this past Sunday, I'm officially retired. So now I'm totally retired from K-State and from NACADA. I don't think I'll ever be totally retired from advising or higher education. I just won't get paid for it. How's that?
So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people still contacting Charlie. What do we do in this situation? What do we do for this?
I hope they will, and I would love to work with folks.
Yeah, especially with UVU. I mean, you're pretty much getting a whole bunch of flying miles doing this. So.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And how are your cats?
Oh, the cats are wonderful. They I think a lot of people saw on Facebook last week that Manhattan had a pretty significant storm come through, and it was not. I think they determined it really wasn't a tornado, but it was a wind surge that came through. But the cats ran to the basement. Then they got totally petrified. So I had to put them in their little house. I'm going to drive them to to Georgia at some point. They were not happy. So it shows that I've got to put that in the back of my car and put them in the back of it and start riding them around onto it.
Oh, yeah. How to get used to it. Oh, and, let's talk more about NACADA, because you've been a NACADA member since 91. You were appointed executive director in 2007. You've had your share of worldly problems that have impacted higher ed. There was the recession in 2008, 2009. There's the pandemic. So as a leader, how did you go about making sure that NACADA made it through these things?
I think the biggest thing that we did was collaborate and work closely with our members, with our leaders, with the board of directors. I hope I did a good job of recognizing that we in the executive office are the implementers of activities, but it's the board and the leaders who decide which pathway they want to go on. My role and Melinda's role, quite frankly, is bridging those two pieces. There are things that the board may want to see happen that you just have to say, I would love to do that, but we need 12 more staff to get that done. And then they go, oh, well, maybe you don't need to do that right now. So it's a balancing act within that. I think connecting with campuses was a big piece, because the more we know what campuses are going through, the better NACADA can respond to their needs. We can plan lots of things, but if we're not really aware of what's happening on the campuses, then we're not meeting those needs. So I think it's just getting out to colleges. I said to Melinda when we had dinner last week, I said, are you as tired as you ought to be? She said, I am. Because, you can't just sit in the EO. She's got to get out, as I did, and not only go to our region conferences or our summer institutes or our annual conference, but just go to campuses and meet chancellors and provosts and advisory directors and advisors and hear what's going on and getting those pieces. So that connecting, I think, is so important. I think prior to 2000, NACADA was a different type of association. It had a different structure. Um, but it really wasn't, I think, in meeting the college's needs, working with colleges, seeing what folks wanted. And I think we've made that shift. And I think that's what's going to help us move through the future. As you and I were talking before we started, I think everybody's seeing this university is going deep into its wait list because they don't have that many students. Well, that means this university now their students are going to go there. Well, then they're going to go into their wait list, so they're the community college. I mean, I think we're going to see those things happen, which means how can NACADA, in the example you just gave a few minutes ago, how can NACADA help the institution that might be one taking some of your students to connect with you, to connect with the community college? How can we help build those bridges? Often bridges aren't built by folks who are at the school, they're outside the school. So if we can help connect you with folks at UCR, with the community college down the street, in ways that are different than what you might could have done on your campus, then that's what we need to be doing and looking at. And so I think there's a lot of potential. I've said before to you when I've done this, and I'll say it again. I think if higher education ignores everything we did during the pandemic, because we did some great, exciting things during the pandemic to meet student needs, well, now we've gone back to in person, and students are saying, whoa, 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 we were doing when I couldn't come. Why can't I do that? So if we forget all we've learned and we don't bring that forward, then we're really going to be in trouble. And so I'm hoping colleges are really looking at how do we take what we did so well in the pandemic, how do we put that in place with being back on campuses live, and then how do we help bring those things together? And advising is going to be key to that. As you know, you're the head on with the students every day on the campus. Your president isn't. I love your president. Your provost isn't. I love your provost. But you're the ones who see the students every day. And so advisors have to be involved in those conversations. They have to be involved in those discussions. And I think NACADA can help bridge some of those gaps in so many ways.
Well, I think that's a good segue in the sense, we're talking about how important advising is, how it's more important now than ever, and how you have advisors on the front lines, we're on the ground, we're meeting with the students, we have that connection with the students. But over these last couple of years, especially the pandemic amplified it, we have many people leaving their jobs, especially within teaching, within higher ed, within advising. So that means advisor professionals are taking off. And I've mentioned a couple episodes that, there are people that even at this institution that I thought would be here until they retired. They cared so much about the students and being in advising that it got to a point where they just said, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And now we're in this, great resignation, as it's called, so what are your thoughts on that and what institutions can do to help?
See, I'm job looking, Matt. You got a job? No, I'm kidding. I think there are two things. I think number one, we need to carefully, in this time, relook or reevaluate what a job description is for an advisor, and be sure that that's clear before we start searching for new advisors. I'm not sure every institution has done that. I think there may be some places that are using the same job description that was used for advisor 10 years ago. Well, it probably was very valid 10 years ago, but look what we've gone through the past 10 years. So let's spend some time being sure our job descriptions are right, that they're on target. I think the other piece is that it's going to be really important that hopefully institutions will turn to NACADA, but training and development for new advisors is essential right now, because you're right. We're going to see I predict over the next 5 years, we're going to see a total influx of new professionals to the field who, if we let them, could be just registration people and never see advising as a profession.
Yeah.
We want to hit them. I don't mean hit them, but maybe hit them. No, we want to touch them quickly to say, welcome to the profession. Welcome to what we do as an advisor. Welcome to the community of scholars across the world and how you can learn from them. Because I don't think we did that well 20 years ago. Now's the time we need to do it. Because if we let folks come in and fall into that registration mode and not advising mode, we're going to have real trouble. And so I think this is the time to really look at our professional development, to think more carefully about how we orient a new advisor. You were just talking about, y'all have just gone through, I think, your 6th orientation, and now you're going to do transfer orientation in July. What are we doing to orient new advisors? And then how do we think through just what you're saying, Matt? You're going to have advisors who are brand new to the field, but you're going to also get advisors who may have been at another college in California or another college in England or another college in Kansas. And so they're coming in understanding advising, but they don't understand your campus. Right. So what type of transfer orientation can we almost do for those advisors? And if we... Oh, I don't care. I'm not employed anymore. If we leave that to HR to do, then advisors not building that community. Obviously, yes, it's got to be endorsed by human resources. They've got to be a part of that process, but they should be planning that. Right. Advisors should be planning that. So how do we partner with HR? How do we partner with human resources? To say, we've got this new group of folks coming in. Here are the things we want them to go through. How do we be sure that happens as they come into the campus? So I think it's I think it is an exciting time. I think we will see such new blood in the field. We'll see so many new people that are going to make huge sacrifices for students and do great work. But if we don't carefully bring them into the community, connect them with NACADA, connect them with each other, in California, connected with the other California state advisors, or if you're in the UC system, connecting you, or hopefully have you connect all of those together and bring, one of the, I've had lots of wonderful experiences in my 20-something years with EO. Did I just lose you?
Nope, I'm still here.
Okay, I hit a button and I lost you. I've had lots of wonderful experiences, but one of the things that I can look back on that I really have been I was so enjoyed to be a part of was the formation of the Advising Association in California. Right. That brought together CSU and UC and community colleges that had never happened before. And I was excited to be the very first keynote at that conference and to be part of that, because I'll just use California as an example. You got 3 distinctly different systems, as well as all the private schools who never communicated. And your association that y'all helped created is doing great work. And so it's things like that I think we could do better in the future. And I know NACADA can be a part of that.
Yeah. My hope is that, that same thing too, that we're able to still work across those different institutions and see, okay, what's one institution doing? Can we adopt that at our institution? I think for a lot of schools, a lot of people I've talked to, that they feel more siloed than ever. And a lot of that's just because the work has just kept piling up. You have people leaving. Now they got to take on more roles. Now we're going, there never seems to be a break or a certain downtime where it's like, okay, now I can work on a project, or I can go and see what this institution's doing, or what's NACADA up to and how can we work together? It's like, oh, I got to get from job A responsibility. Now I got to get job B done, and then job C, and then help out with this. And now it's orientation. And once orientation's done in summer, oh, now we got fall semester coming up.
And unfortunately, when that happens, sometimes we're so busy doing that a student walks the door and you think, what do you want? It's like, excuse me, that's why you're here. And so, how do we keep that from happening? And I think you're right. Um, you've just finished 6 or 7 orientations. You're going to the transfer orientation. You've got about a week that you can breathe, but in that week time, you've got all of these other projects you need to do.
Yeah.
So, how can NACADA find ways to become ingrained in what you do so you don't have to go to something to connect with someone? You don't have to go to a webcast. You don't have to, all of those things are great, but how do we become ingrained in your life, Matt? I'm looking at you, but every advisor, so that you understand we're always here to support you and move forward. And I think NACADA's done great work in the past, and I know it will continue to do great work with that.
Yeah. And you were talking about like new advisors coming on board and making sure that we're training them, we're onboarding them. But let's talk about maybe seasoned advisors, those that have been around, 5 or more years, and maybe they're going through the motions at this point. They don't want to necessarily leave advising or higher ed, but they just want to get rejuvenated.
Well,
Any advice to them?
yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things you've said is really important. Is on many campuses, if you want to progress or get more money, you've got to become a director. I don't want to be a director. I love advising students, but that means I'm just going to be stuck here. And that's, even though that's not what it is, that's what it sounds like.
Mhm.
And so I think, how can NACADA develop things that are for those seasoned advisors, for those folks who just need that rejuvenation, or to keep those folks from becoming stale by connecting with them? And then recognizing that, there's probably some things that an advisor who's been advising 10 years needs to have, that if they go to a conference, they think that's, oh, everything's for new people. How do we put those together? I know, Matt, you're hosting the Portland conference, and I'm sure as y'all looked at those, how many thousand abstracts that came in for those, I'm sure y'all looked at that and said, this is fantastic for a new person, but what do we do for folks who've been advising for 20 years? But begin to really put that into motion and think of those. And so I think you're right. I know we started some wonderful projects on that before I left. I know Melinda will move that even further. But if we don't forget those, that's going to be a problem. Because if we only work with brand new or with directors, who's working in between? So how do we do that? When I first started, there was no such thing as the Administrators Institute. There was no such thing as the Assessment Institute. Our very first Administrators Institute was in San Antonio in 2003, I think, maybe, or four. I don't remember exactly. One of those years before you were born, Matt. Within that, but it was the first time that we did a 3-day meeting just for administrators. We had 500 people register because it was, people were begging for things for administrators. Now we have a 20-year-old Administrators Institute that's meeting new needs and doing great work. We need to be sure we do the same type of things for those folks who are seasoned advisors, but don't want to be a director, but they want to keep being energized.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? And how can NACADA be a part of that? I think is going to be the key piece.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned Portland, and that's definitely something that our proposal and pre-conference and poster chairs were looking at was, can we make sure we have something for everyone? And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, you have a lot of, proposals that are submitted for, hey, this would be great for a new advisor, someone that's been in the field, like, just starting up until like 2-3 years. But what about people after that? What
Right.
about those that have been there after 3 years?
And then what are we doing for directors? Or how do we,
Yeah.
I know one of the things y'all looked at, Matt, because everyone does, is we have a lot of folks who are now provosts and chancellors. They've come from advising, but they don't come back to NACADA because they don't see us as their primary association anymore. How do we bring them back? Because if a provost can be at a conference and talk, I think, I don't know, well, 45 years ago, probably, what conference is this? The 40th conference, the 43rd? You probably know what the number is. I don't. But long ago, NACADA made the decision that nothing would ever say doctor, and everything would be the first name and the small name. So I can remember many years ago, sitting at a table talking to this woman and just having a great conversation. She was asking what I did and she did, and just da 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 da. I was brand new, and I said, "Well, Virginia, what else do you do?" And it was Virginia Gordon. And I had no idea who Virginia Gordon was. And if I had known who she was, I would never have talked to her because I'd have been too petrified. And so I think that's something else we have to continue is that close connection, that that ability to do that at annual conferences, at regional conferences, at institutes that provide a new advisor a chance to learn from a provost, but also a chance to get a provost to go back and think about what it been like when he or she was first starting as an advisor. And so how do we merge those together? And I think NACADA, I mean, you know me, Matt. I think NACADA could do everything. And so I think NACADA could do some great things to make those things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like you're talking about, institutions need to be hopefully changing things up for the future. I mean, that's also kind of like NACADA as well with conferences. It can't always be the same thing. So like just one change in terms of making sure we have sessions that anyone can attend, or people aren't just going to attend the conference and then fill out the survey saying like there was no sessions for me. So right. I do want to definitely shout out like Clay Schwinn and Patrick Fernandez, our pre-conference co-chairs, Stanley Choi and Carrie Kincannon, our concurrent session co-chairs.
You have an amazing team with you. I tell you what.
Yeah, and Maria Domingo, our poster session chair, who definitely looked at all of that. So hopefully those that are attending in October, you will definitely have plenty of sessions that you can go to that will be directly connected to what you do or what you may want to do.
Matt, I think one of the things that, this is my opportunity to say whatever I want to say, I guess, right. Matt. One of the things I hope members will recognize is even NACADA can't make changes overnight. So Portland's in October. November, they're starting on next year's conference. Yeah. So there may be some ideas that come up in Portland that it might be 3 years before they can be implemented. But I just hope members will know we're never going to forget what you said. It may take us a while to get there. Obviously, Fair already has contract signed for it. And I don't know, is it Orlando next year?
Yep.
Okay. So I know, let me back up. I know she has contracts on it because we did that before I left. So there may not be things that can happen in Orlando, but in 3 years, that change should come about. Yeah. So I hope members will just recognize that we can't change it overnight, but we will never forget the ideas that came forward. We will always try to move where we need to move.
Yeah. And then also for anyone listening, don't assume that someone else has already made a request. If you see something, say something, ask about it, put that nudge in, hey, your suggestion on something that could be different and be for the better, so don't forget, Absolutely. Like everyone has a voice.
Well, I think, and I'll just say publicly, Matt, that when you and Colin began these podcasts, you kind of started small to look where you are. And I hope what your folks who are listening to the podcast will do is say, oh, okay, I remember Kevin Thomas. If I see him, I'm going to say, because they've seen these people, a whole lot of folks who they maybe would never have met.
Right.
Were not for the podcasts. But they know now, oh, I could go talk to him if I see him in the hall. Yeah. And so I encourage people to, go back before Portland and just relook at all the adventures in advising programs that happen, and then go see if you can find those people while you're in Portland.
And get an autograph from those guests.
Absolutely.
And you're mentioning Portland. We're talking about Portland. You mentioned Farah and Dana, and Farah Turner and Dana McNary. They're both actually on this podcast episode as well. Tell me about them.
Oh my God. I don't know what I can say other than they were two of the most amazing people I've ever worked with. Dana came to us as a student. And so she's been with us our entire undergraduate experience. And then we didn't let her go. And we kept her. Then she got married and moved to somewhere else. We said, that's okay. You're not leaving us. And then she had babies, but we've kept her. She's amazing. She's so wonderful to work with. Farah came in. 2006, maybe, I think, as our former executive director, Bobby Flaherty's assistant. Um, when I came into the role a couple of years later, um, I looked at her and said, okay, what do you want to do differently? Because I knew how good she was and we were going to lose her if I couldn't offer her some new opportunities. So she said, well, I'd like to get involved. So we made that happen. Um, and then when Rhonda Baker decided that she wanted to move on and do some other things, Farrah was there to take over the annual conference. Um, they're the hardest working women I've ever seen in my entire life. They're the most dedicated to NACADA. They're the most dedicated to every single conference chair. You know, people say, well, you know, they just like Matt this year. No, Matt, you'll be their buddy forever because they don't ever lose you within that. Um, but they'll always say, what can we do different next year? What can we do that'll be new and exciting next year? They are never. I used to say to them, that was the most, but next year we could do, and I'd say, okay, ladies, do me a favor. Take one day to congratulate yourself. Just take this one day to be proud of yourself because they were always looking at the future within it. I don't remember the date, and I'll just put this out there that you might want to find out. Sometime in October is both of their birthdays. And at one of the annual conferences, we were there on their birthday. And so we were able to sing happy birthday to them for the general session. And they both about killed me. But I don't know whether it's around the Portland conference or not. But they both they're just I can't say enough good about them. You know.
Well, even if it's not on their birthday, it's still in October, so it'll still be their birthday month. So
Absolutely.
Giving you some ideas here.
And you know, we were so fortunate. You know, the way the executive office was created, Matt, it got created at Kansas State because the continuing ed did annual conferences. So Nancy Barnes, who was the initial coordinator of the annual conferences, she had done it as a continuing ed person before NACADA ever existed in the EO. So we've had folks learn from each other, gain from each other. And I know Farrah and Dana work so closely with the executive office and each single person. It's just a great partnership. And I'm so proud of them and all they do. I can't say enough about the amazing work the two ladies do. They really are amazing. Yeah. And they can move anywhere in the world. And Melinda just better put them so they can move, but they're still working for us because you know it doesn't matter where they live; they're always doing a great job for us, and I love them to death. I really do. I love them both.
I mean, they have been phenomenal over this last year, just getting to work with them, and you know they've made the job so much easier for me as a conference co-chair. And they have put so much work in, and so much was already done before I even started in the conference co-chair role. So
if you remember, Matt, a year ago, I called you and your co-chair, and I promised you that Farrah and Dana will make it an easy process.
You were right.
They do all the hard work. And I hope you see that to be the case. That they do all the evil stuff, all the behind the scenes stuff, and you just were able to have fun with it. Which is what we want to happen.
Yeah, I do remember when you called, and I know I was super nervous, and it was one of those. Now, is Charlie saying this to me to make you say yes, or is it true? and you had said, why don't you set up a meeting with Farrah and Dana, and you could actually ask them, you know, then they can tell you. And I did, and they told me exactly what you had said, and I'm like, okay, let's still try it out. And then, yeah, from the first time we had an actual planning committee meeting, and how much was already done, and it was so structured, and you know we had the timeline from Farrah and Dana. I was like, wow, this is so much different from what I'm used to. And yeah, I was like, yeah, Charlie was absolutely 100% right.
And you know, I guess it kind of changes your life a little bit, Matt. The first thing I remember most is chairing the 2000 conference in Orlando. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I had been involved with NACADA for many years prior to that. I'd been a recent chair and all of that, but it kind of changed my NACADA life because I saw the big picture. And then it didn't matter that even though that conference was over, they were stuck with me. You know, I was lucky a job came off the executive office. I might have just moved to Kansas without a job. Um, but it's just a real, it just kind of changes your life about how you think about things. And I hope
Mhm.
you and Leah have seen that happen to the two of you as you've done this, because you're both amazing. But I know that hopefully you're even more amazing now after working with Dana and Farah.
Oh, it's been a blast, and I'm so blessed to have that opportunity to work with Farah and Dana, and actually actually got to meet them in person. Well, I met Farah in person in Cincinnati. I knew Dana's name, but I didn't know what Dana looked like. And so I felt bad because now that we're on all these Zoom meetings, I was like, oh my gosh, you were I saw you in like the green room, and
But you
but
didn't know who she was,
right,
because that's the thing that I've always been impressed
yeah,
with is you go in the green room, which is really the NACADA headquarters during the
right,
annual conference, and Farah and Data don't look any different than anyone else. Everybody's working, everybody's put together. You don't see two people in charge. You
mhm,
don't see two people ordering folks around and telling you. They're all working as a team. And
yep,
so what I've been so proud about with the NACADA Executive Office is no one orders anybody around, including me and Melinda. We all work as a team and build together. And the annual conference is a perfect example. You go into that workroom or the green room, whatever it might be at whatever conference, and you don't know who Farah is or Dana is, or I mean, you may know their names, but not because they're in charge. And I
mhm.
think that's what makes this such an exciting conference every year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as we wind down with this episode and this interview, I just want to give the floor to you. Is there anything else that you want to tell the global advising community?
Um, Thank you. I think that's my biggest thing is just thank you. It has been a wonderful experience. It's been a wonderful opportunity. Um, I know Melinda will do great things. I'm behind her 100%. If she needs anything, I'm here. But if she doesn't, I'm still going to be standing there applauding everything that gets done. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to all the people that I've visited your campuses. I've seen you at conferences. I've had you in summer institute groups or whatever the case may be. Um, but it's been a great way to end my career. I'm one of those Facebook people. I'm on it a lot. I'm friends with a lot of folks that I taught in high school in 1977. As I think back, that was some of my most favorite teaching. Was when I was brand new. I was 20 years old because I'd gone straight through college. Those students thought I was probably 100 because I looked it. Because I made sure to have a tie and the whole lot. Then they'll say, "Wait a minute, you're just 3 years old." I said, "Yep, that's right." Um, so that's great. But now I love that I'm ending my career with NACADA because it's been a wonderful, wonderful 20 years. I want to thank the executive office staff. I want to thank every person in that executive office. Each of them do amazing work and they do it together. Maxine Coffee, thank you to Maxine. Um, Maxine's quiet, Maxine's behind the scenes, but I tell you, couldn't have done that job, and neither could Melinda without Maxine. And I really want to thank her. And then I just want to publicly, and I hope people will spread the word if they hear this, and if they're on the Kansas State campus, they'll make sure she hears it. But thank you to Dr. Debbie Mercer. Her support of me, her support of Melinda, but her support of NACADA has been phenomenal. Mike Colin was a great dean to work for, uh, but he kind of got NACADA there. Debbie inherited it when she came in, but she's been so wonderful. So I really want to publicly thank Debbie Mercer for all she did for me and all she's done for NACADA. And then, Matt, I want to thank you. I still remember that conference in wherever we were, Belgium, somewhere, where I said, wait a minute, Matt Collum, and I just put you two together in a reception that night, and look at where we are today. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank Colin because you believed what I said. You believed I'll support you. When I said to you, tell me what you need to make it happen, I found the money and got you what you needed.
Yep.
Um, but y'all trusted me, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate it because these podcasts that the two of you started, and I know Matt's now got a busy, I mean, Colin now has a busy, busy life, so He's not with us, but he's with us in spirit. Even though I look at this, I see you. I still think Column's right there watching this. Um, but I want to thank the two of you because it would have been real easy to have a couple of beers that reception have gone away and never came back together. But the two of you made a pact. I mean, we all walk up to me and say, "We promise you, we're going to put something together." And I just thank you so much because you've added to the profession. You've added to the CADA, but you've also brought folks together in ways we had never done before, Matt. And so just thank you, Colin, so much for what y'all have done because I'm so proud of y'all.
Yeah. Well, the beers help too. So yeah, but I just want to thank you too. I mean, a huge thank you. I mean, you've been such an advocate for higher ed and academic advising for many, many years, and you're still going to continue to be that advocate even after retirement. And I'm blessed to call you friend. Chris Linfelt would always talk about one Charlie Nutt, and getting to briefly
I
chat
tell you
with
what,
you.
I love that man.
Yeah, absolutely. I miss him every day. And, getting to briefly chat with you at the Vegas conference in 2015. And then when you've spoken at our campus, when Chris brought you on to speak to our advisors and faculty at Cal State San Bernardino, being our keynote for the first two California Collaborative conferences, supporting the podcast, supporting any decision that I've wanted to do and supporting that. And even nudging me in areas that maybe I didn't even think about. And I'm so glad that you did. And it's truly been a blessing. So, I'm always in awe of your ability to connect people together and be inspiring to so many. So, a huge thank you to you as well.
Thank you so much, Matt. I love you. And y'all, and please keep in touch.
Will do.